I've recently had a problem with my Flybear Cessna 182 that I want to make you guys aware of. I recorded my first two flights. I've posted those first two flights, and I put a third battery pack in it to conduct another flight with it, and the motor wouldn't spin up. So I always take at least 3 planes out with me. So I had a couple of other things to fly. I didn't think anything of it. I wasn't going to mess with it while I was out there in the desert. I just assumed that they probably didn't seat the motor connector into the board all the way, and it had worked its way loose. So I went ahead and finished my flight sessions out there, and then came back and removed the wing and disconnected the motor cable, reseated it into the board, plugged a battery in, tested it against nothing. So I disconnected the motor from the board. I connected it up to an external ESC. I used my ESC servo tester to test the motor, and it spun right up. So there was nothing wrong with the motor. There was nothing wrong with the cable. There was nothing wrong with the connector. Apparently the ESC went out on the board. So I want to make you guys aware of that. I don't know if there's a quality issue with these boards or if I just got the short straw on this plane. Happens every once in a while. Every once in a while you get a bad product, right? You get a product that's got a problem. It doesn't mean they're all going to be that way. It doesn't mean they're not all going to be that way. So be aware of it. If you guys choose to pull the trigger on this, right? Okay, so now I've got an ESC that's not working on the board. So now, what's my options, right? I mean, that's the way I look at it. What's my option? Because I think it's a really good airframe. Okay, so what I did was I used one of these boards. Let me bring an image of it up here. It's a Hobby King Orange RX. It's an RX3SM. It's a combination stabilizer and receiver. And it's not a gyro, it's a stabilizer. So all it provides is wind mitigation. It doesn't provide any type of stabilization, self-leveling or anything like that. That's one and only purpose, is to provide you with a receiver and to provide wind mitigation. Okay, so there's a picture of the front of it. Here's a picture of the ports. And the reason that I decided to use this board, because it was still brand new in the pack. I've never used it. I've had it forever and a day. It's got the exact same size connectors on the board as the cable coming off of the motor and off of the servos. So I thought, well, that's going to be the easiest way to get it back in the air. So I used that, and then I used a Hobby King 10 amp ESC. It's rated for 2S to 3S, so this is getting set up for a 2S power system now. So I use this Hobby King 10 amp ESC. It's got a switching back on it. It provides 5 volts at 1 amp, and it's rated for 2S to 3S. So I ran it up. That's the ESC that I tested the motor with. It synced up fine. There was no problems with it, so I decided that's what I'm going to go ahead and use. So those are the components that I have in it now. So now that I'm flying it in full manual mode, because all that provides is wind mitigation, I discovered how tail heavy that plane is, and I want to make you aware of that too, in case you already have it. In my second flight that I published, I had the spiral of death. Where I got slow in a turn, I was putting an aileron and rudder, and it just dipped a wing and just spiraled down into the ground. I could not recover from it. Well, at that time, I thought I was having problems with the gyro, because the gyro doesn't have a manual mode. It doesn't have just a wind mitigation mode. So there was no way to tell the balance of the plane from the stock gyro that was in it. So once I switched that out and put in that manual mode receiver and stabilizer, I realized how tail heavy it was. So my recommendation would be, I think you're going to need at least 6 grams of nose ballast weight with that 1S setup to get the plane balanced where it should be balanced on the CG. And where I have mine balanced, and mine flies really well on this with this 2S setup in manual mode, and it's very, very stable. And I can get a stall from it, but the stalls are pretty mild and they're easy to recover from, unlike the stall that I had when it was stock. But I think the tail heavy condition was what was causing that. The gyro just could not recover from it. So if you set up the balance on the plane so that when you put your fingers underneath those screws, right in the center of the screws where the wing struts attach to the wing, if you get a neutral balance on that at that point, or just slightly nose heavy at that point, I think it's going to be a very, very stable plane for you. So I don't think that's going to be a problem. I will be posting 2 flights, I think, that I've recorded so far on using the 2S power setup on it. But anyway, stay tuned for those 2S flight demonstrations. It proves that it is a very, very good, stable airframe. All right, so that's a wrap on this episode. I'll see you next time in the Tinker's Lab.